There was a time when the Congress ruled the Indian politics. But then came an era where the government earned the tag of government of scams. The 2G scam, the Coalgate scam, and the Commonwealth Games scam. And there are numerous scams which took place under the same UPA government. And that is why India will take longer to forgive Congress. Number 1. The Commonwealth Games scam. The Commonwealth Games in 2010 were organized in New Delhi. This was not just any other sports event, but it was a moment for the whole India to show the world that we are ready. But what really went wrong in the event? The focus shifted away from sports. The Commonwealth Games were supposed to celebrate athletes, records, and national pride, but slowly, headlines of the Commonwealth Games were changed. Despite India was doing great on the field of Commonwealth Games, but off the field, where the politicians were playing, they failed badly. They ruined India's reputation and led us to the global embarrassment to a lasting stage. Another point is massive cost escalation. What began as a reasonable budgeted event quietly turned into a financial shock. Costs multiplied, contracts grew bigger, and people began asking that where the hell is the all money going? Number 3. Last minute infrastructure completion. Despite years of preparation, but construction happened at the last moment. Stadiums, flyovers, games village, all of these completed just before the deadline, which led to rushed work, safety concerns, and broken structures. It felt like planning slept for years and woke up just before the opening ceremony. Fourth, concerns raised by athletes. Then came to the most painful part of the games. International athletes spoke up about hygiene, living conditions, and basic facilities. For a country like India, hosting a such global event, this was deeply embarrassing. It was not just a criticism, it was disappointment heard globally. Next is persistent negative media coverage. Every morning brought a new headline: overpricing, kickbacks, delays, confusion. Media didn't need to exaggerate, the visuals spoke for themselves. Trust was slipping day by day from the UPA government. Words versus reality. Officials kept saying everything is under control, but the ground reality was different and something else. This gap between assurance and truth hurt public confidence the most. People of India start questioning their own officials that why we can't accept the truth. And from there, we are moving to our last point, the long term reputation impact. Yes, the Commonwealth was finished. The games were completed. Yes, athletes performed brilliantly. And most of all, India performed phenomenally. But Commonwealth Games of 2010 left a lesson behind for us, not a legacy. It became a reminder of how poor governance can overshadow even the biggest opportunities. And with all of that, the Commonwealth Games 2010 was not remembered for what India achieved, but for what India could have been, what our politicians could have done to improve our global image. And with that, we are heading to our next point, the Coalgate scam. Coal. It doesn't make headlines like sports or elections, but coal runs India. It produces electricity, factories, jobs, growth, etc. So, what's the background of this Coalgate scam? The background of Coalgate scam involves the illegal auction processes, allotment of coal blocks to some private companies between 2004 to 2011. So, what Colgate was about? Between year 2004 to 2011, coal blocks, one of India's most valuable natural resources, were allotted to private companies, not through open auctions, but through a corrupted system behind the closed doors. And each coal block were bought by these companies at a very cheaper price than we have expected to get it from the auction process. So, where these things went wrong? The government followed an old method instead of competitive bidding. There was no transparent auction, no accountability by government, and that raised one simple question. If all of these things were right, then why the Manmohan government didn't go for the open auction process? The CAG report states that we have faced a total loss of $210 billion dollars due to such non transparent coal block allocations, which highlights the policy failure by UPA government and how it was exposed. So the CAG flagged irregularities. The media scrutiny followed. Petitions reached to the Supreme Court of India, which cancelled all the allocations to the private companies. The CAG bombshell was the most important part of exposing that scam. In 2012, the CAG report changed everything. It said that by not auctioning the coal blocks, the country may have lost around 2010 billion dollars, which was equal to 11% of our GDP in 2012 and 521% more than our expected defense budget back in 2012. The opposition, which was BJP back then, protested along with the people of India for this huge scam and for the resources of our motherland. The political storm grew in India. The public anger started growing day by day. The parliament stalled. Debates turned ugly, not just because one move of Indian government, but of a system that people felt was failing them. The investigation begins. CBI investigations followed, files moved. Officials, politicians, and companies came under scrutiny. For the public, it was confirmed one thing, that it was not just a paperwork issue. 2 years later, in 2014, the Supreme Court of India stepped into the matter. The Supreme Court declared many allocations of coal blocks illegal and arbitrary and held the government responsible for this. This was a strong and a bold move by the Supreme Court of India, which was considered a rare and strong judicial correction. But unfortunately, the damage was already done and it already made a long term impact. Coalgate permanently changed how India looks at its natural resources. Auctions became the norm, but the damage to public trust could not be auctioned back. Coalgate was not just about coal, it was about who controls our nation's wealth and who answers when the trust is broken. With that, we are heading to our next and last point, the 2G spectrum scam. The 2G technology was introduced in India under the PV Narasimha Rao's government, which enabled users to make voice calls and text messaging. With the time and rapid growth in technology, demands for more mobile services grew, and India's telecom sector became a key economic sector. With the increasing demand, the 2G spectrum in India originates from early 2000s with the rapid expansion of mobile telephony. Licenses of those 2G spectrums were initially allotted at fixed prices to encourage growth, long before telecom became a high value competitive sector. But obviously, it's India. At the end, the 2G spectrum became a 176 lakh crore scam, which was looted from the taxpayers' money. So, what is this 2G spectrum scam? It is nothing but illegal allotments of 2G spectrums because of corruption, bribery, and favoritism by our political leaders. The telecom 2G spectrums were allotted at below market price without a proper auction process, just like that Coalgate scam. Again, the Supreme Court have to step in into the matter. So, the decision that started all was traced back in 2007-2008. Telecom. Spectrum is invisible, but it is one of the most valuable public resources a country owns. In 2008, the government allocated 2G telecom spectrum to private companies. Instead of auctions, licenses were given at on a first come basis, first served basis using outdated 2001 prices. And why it raised eyebrows? By 2008, India's telecom market has exploded. Demand was high, competition was at another level, yet prices remained the old. Naturally, questions arose: why no auction? Why rush? And who benefited the most? And then, 2 years later, in 2010, the CAG released a report estimating massive notional loss to the exchequer due to non-auction process. The numbers shocked the nation. For the public, it was not just about figures. It felt like national resources were undervalued. The taxpayers' efforts and their money was undervalued. Later, the public outrage, the court action, and the consequences began. The report triggered nationwide outrage. Parliament was repeatedly disrupted, and CBI investigations followed. Senior politicians and top telecom executives were charged. And later, in 2012, the landmark judgment of our Supreme Court came. In 2012, the Supreme Court of India delivered a historic verdict. It declared that the 2G spectrum allocations were illegal, the processes were arbitrary and unconstitutional. The court cancelled 122 telecom licenses, stating that national resources must be allotted transparently and with proper auction process. Then, in year 2017, years later, the trial outcome. A special court acquitted all accused, citing lack of evidence, but by then the damage was already done, politically, economically, and most importantly, it broke the nation's trust. It broke the people of India trust towards their leader again. The 2G case was not just about guilt and innocence, it permanently changed how India allocates its public resources. The scam shattered UPA's credibility, the Congress' credibility, the leadership's credibility. It symbolized corruption, policy misuse, and the collapse of public confidence. And most importantly, it led to the collapse of public trust in Indian National Congress, which led to their decline. And with that, I am ending my first video. Thank you for watching. I know it was not perfect. My voice continuously broke down. My delivery was not professional, and for that, I genuinely apologize to my viewers. But these scams were not just headlines, they changed how people of India voted and questioned the power. Yes, the video may sound biased, but it tells the truth. This channel will improve, the research will stay honest, and see you in the next one.